This panel will be moderated by Christian Farioli, CEO, Digital Marketing Strategist at EST XNC. I will leave it to you to introduce yourself because of the lack of time. And our first panelist for this session is Mr. Shobhit Tandon, COO at Alamar Foods Domino's. Second panelist for this session, Mr. Sridhar Iyer, Head of Neo and Liability Products at Mashreq Neo. And the third panelist is Ms. Aurora Gómez, Director of Growth Operations and Analytics at Careem. I would like you all to please come up on the stage and you all can please introduce yourselves quickly.
Very good, very good.
All right, very good, ladies and gentlemen. We have here an amazing panel since the three industry represented here by the two gentlemen and the lady, they apparently have nothing in common. We have here a company making pizza, a bank, and a car sharing business, right? But every company, they need to grow. That's why I'm gonna ask them a few questions today to figure out what is their vision, what are their idea, and some of the tactics that they're using. But first, let me just introduce them, or let them introduce themselves. So starting with the ladies first, Aurora.
Hello. So my name is Aurora. I'm working at Careem as Director of Customer Growth, and I've been with Careem for the last 3.5 years. Overall, I have around 11 years of experience in banking, pharmaceuticals, and now in ride-hailing and expanding into more businesses with Careem. And I'm really happy to be here and share some tips around growth with you guys.
Very good.
Hi, Sridhar Iyer. I head Neo, which is Mashreq's digital bank. I've been in this part of the world for the last couple of years, but I'm a career banker. I've worked in a variety of geographies, from Europe to Asia to the Nordics. So this is another experience for me here in the UAE.
Hi, I'm Shobhit. I work for Domino's Pizza as Chief Operating Officer. Look after the whole of GCC, Levant, and Pakistan region. I've got 20 years of experience, and with Domino's itself, I think that I spent close to around 10 to 11 years. Thank you.
Very good, wonderful. So let's start now with a simple question, and then we're gonna go for more complicated. Right. So the first question is for Sridhar. So how has the business landscape in the Middle East changed over the years? And then what impact has made on customer behaviors?
This is not part of the syllabus, Eric. You didn't mention this before. Okay, anyway, I think first of all, we are very fortunate that we are living in times of rapid tech development. The sort of development that's happened in the last 5 to 10 years is far outpaced any development that happened in the past few decades. Having said that, there are a variety of developments that are happening that is changing the banking landscape, but I'll just pick on 2 or 3 that are very obvious and have a huge impact. The first one, of course, is the growth of smartphones, especially in this part of the world. When this part of the world, we have about 95% plus penetration of smartphones. And these are triggered by 2 things. One, of course, is the rapid decrease in cost of smartphones. But more importantly, if you look at this geography, this is almost an 85% expat market. And given that they're all expats, there is a need to keep in touch with friends and family back home. And the best way to do that is through smartphones. So this is a highly smartphone savvy market. And that is something that as industry pioneers, we should be aware of. The second thing is quite related to smartphones is the fact that bandwidth prices as well as bandwidth availability, both are, prices are decreasing, availability is increasing. And that lends itself to greater content, richer content, better way of communicating with customers. Third thing which is very, very important is the fact that customers now don't rely on one source of information. I mean, there is this information democratization that's happened, because of which customers now don't rely on a banker to tell them what is the best product or service for the customer. They look at a variety of sources, social media, Google, a variety of chat forums, etc., and then they make up their minds. So it puts pressure on both the customer as well as on the organization to make sure that the information that is being given is the right sort of information. And then finally, two things that will dramatically change the way that we will be doing business in the next 3 to 5 years. One is that the ability to store huge amounts of data and analyze it is becoming much faster and cheaper. Right? The ability to store quantum data and quantum analytics is becoming cheaper and faster. And the fact is that riding on that, we now have AI, machine learning, which allows us to personalize and automate a variety of campaigns. So what impact does it have on customers? First, of course, is that the smartphone has become ubiquitous. Everybody has a smartphone. These days, we use smartphones for a variety of functions, right from ordering grocery to hiring cabs, etc. And the fact that we have launched a bank on the app is a follow-up to that. The customers can do all their routine work on an app. Why can't they do banking? It's quite absurd to imagine that they will stand in the queue at the branch or they will call the call center for banking. They will do this as well. Maybe it's a bit ahead of time, but that's the way the future will be. The second, like I said, customers won't rely on one source of information. And the third, because of the ability to analyze data and because of the ability to store data in a variety of secure places, customers will expect that they get offers and they get information at the place they want, at the time they want, and more importantly, through the device that they want. So these are things that will change and these are things that will happen in the future.
Great, thank you so much, Sridhar. Now then a question for Aurora. Since a few months ago, I got the chance to meet and interview Emre Tok, probably your predecessor. So now it's gonna be not an easy task for her to keep up, since Emre was the guy that brought Careem to be acquired by Uber. Then we know how much money got sold for. So, but I'm sure that she's a bright lady and she can keep up with the time. And I'm gonna ask her specifically if she can share some insights about some growth strategy that has been worked ever since and what has changed also across the time.
Yeah, sure. So, well, now that you're mentioning Emre, yeah, we've been working together, or we were working together for a long time at Careem. So we've had a lot of learnings around what works when it comes to growth. Now, Careem is a fairly young company. We launched in 2012, and since then, especially in the beginning, we relied on geographical expansion to grow and acquisition of new users. And when it came to engage with users, since this part of the world was very price sensitive and reacting a lot to promotions, we were just blanket promoting on rides across the network. Now, after some time, and especially recently with the acquisition from Uber, and now after Uber and Lyft both did their IPO, and we saw a change in the markets and on what the shareholders are demanding. They are demanding profits. It's no longer about only growing your top line, growth. It's about also making sure that you have a path to profitability. So those blanket promotions and spending everywhere on acquisition are no longer an option for us. Now, the way we're looking at it today is taking a more segmented approach when it comes to engagement, leveraging machine learning and AI as well to make sure that we trigger the specific, not only promotions, but communication to the right user at the right time, but also solving for use cases. So we're becoming much more targeted when it comes to use cases, both on the how to use our services that we have available today, but also on thinking of new services that we can provide. And an example of that would be rides to schools. We realized that there was no option for mothers and fathers to take their children to school. So we launched Careem Kids in the UAE. It's just an example. Or services like the need for mobility between different cities in Saudi, especially Jeddah to Mecca, Mecca to Medina. So offering that also as part of our portfolio was also another source to grow that was different to what we were doing before. And then moving forward, having a loyalty program, offering some packages or bundling options is what's working for us today.
I still remember from the last conversation with Emre that Careem was launching like 20 to 30% of the campaigns entirely generated by artificial intelligence. Is still the case, or the number went up?
The number went up, and our target, I think it's for end of Q3, would be to have around 80% of all our campaigns launched directly and automatically through our what we call our growth engine, and leveraging the power of data.
Wonderful. So no more people, only machines. Very good. Now the next question is for Mr. Shobhit, that is handling one of the topics that is one of my favorite, which is pizza. But today we're not going to talk about pizza. My question for him is, how tech savvy is the general population of the Middle East?
Well, I think that in Middle East we are dealing with one of the most tech-savvy population, considering that close to around 67% of the people have the internet access compared to a global average of around 57%. And also considering that the mobile proliferation, not just the handset, the smartphones, but even the broadband is becoming much better, and by 2025 it's close to going to be around 90% of the people are going to have mobile broadband. Plus 4G is going to be more than 50% in the Middle East itself. Though, this is a very diverse, Middle East, we can't put UAE and Somalia at the same page, but having said that, that also means that UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi, these are the markets which are almost like 100% internet penetration, So that obviously, in the sense that also has a big impact on the way that the businesses are run, and also on the way that the consumers are perceiving it. So for example, e-commerce in the Middle East has grown 10x in the last 3 years, from a $20 billion industry to a $200 billion industry. And m-commerce is already overtaking the e-commerce in all aspects. So, I mean, from our side, and then what also multiplies a bit of it is the concentration of the largest generation group, which are the millennials in the UAE, and with 150 different countries all put together, all of them coming together. So they are not just the generators of the technology, but also the consumers of the technology. So therefore, for all brands like ours to be ahead of the game in terms of technology is really critical. And probably in some time I can also talk about some of the technology initiatives that we do. And these are like the critical path, I think, for critical implications for the kind of market that we operate in.
Can I just add on?
Sure.
In addition to what he said, also the infrastructure that is available for people to become tech savvy is pretty high here. And I'll give you some examples of it. First is, as a bank, for example, it's possible to do KYC, know your customer, completely digitally. Right? And that's not available in many markets that I have worked in. Faster payments, although it looks very intuitive and hygiene now, this again is one of those things that's available here, which is not available in some developed countries. The ability to pull salary data from one bank with the customer consent, the UAE FTS, is yet another tech infrastructure built by the government and entities here. So apart from all the trends in terms of consumer, the infrastructure that's been set up in this market also lends itself to better internet growth.
That's very good. So you say that even the government helped the digitalization of these kind of processes, right?
And I can share a different perspective, because from Careem we also operate in markets like Morocco, like Iraq, and like Pakistan, where tech savviness is there, but not at the level that we see in the UAE, for example, Kuwait, Saudi. And not only that, even though the mobile phone penetration is really high and smartphone penetration is really high, it's based on lower end phones. So for that, we realized really, like recently actually, it came up in a hackathon that we had at Careem, that our app was becoming very heavy in terms of the megas, the space that it occupies in your phone. So we launched, and we are still working on it, a Careem Lite version of the app, which is 1/10 of the size of our regular app. Uber has also an Uber Lite version of their app, and it runs just much faster, because that is something that we realized from some of the users in those markets. It was becoming very challenging as we evolve our application for them to use it and have a satisfactory experience when the app was becoming slow, crashing because of the size of it.
Oh, that's a very smart decision. I'm wondering within the audience, how many of you ever thought to have two separate apps? One for high-end phones and one for low-end. That's an interesting concept, right? Wonderful. Now, a more tough question for our guest, Sridhar. I'm sorry you get the tough questions. All right. So the question for you is, how has technology influenced the customer behaviors? And also, to what extent has this altered market segmentation? Which in some extent, you already answered half of it in the previous question. Yeah. But if you want to add something.
Like I alluded in my first opening answer, it's transformed the way customers behave. Just to add on to what I said, today as a digital bank, the customers that we have, they don't just compare us with other banks. They don't look at us and say, look, how are you different from a Liv or an Emirates NBD? Based on their experiences across a variety of industries, they compare us along those parameters in different industries. For example, if Amazon delivers in 24 hours, they'd expect that the bank would do the delivery piece in 24 hours. If the UI UX of a particular e-commerce site is very intuitive and simple and easy, they would expect that banking becomes easy as well. So the experiences that shape them in a variety of industries, they expect that the banks would step up and offer that sort of level. Second is this instant, right? The ability to be gratified instantly. This is a trend that has been perpetuated mainly because of advance in technology, but also because of the ability of other industries to do this. And that's what they expect us. Our approach to banking is a bit different from being a lifestyle bank. We think banking is a serious business. People don't jump out of bed today and say, look, I'm going to do banking. It's not a sexy business that way. Right? People expect a little bit of seriousness, but they expect that banking will be made simple. So the way we look at it is the ability for banks to make their banking transactions really simple and intuitive, encourage customers to do repeat transactions and make that really straightforward and simple, and come up with compelling propositions for customers that will allow them to be comfortable with their banking. And we think that it's unlikely that customers will come onto a banking app to check out the news or check out what's happening in the movie world. So we think that customers will come to the banking app to see if their finances are in order, if they can get some good deals, if there's some smart suggestions in terms of managing their finances. And that's the area that we take.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, if you want to add something?
Yeah, I just want to add two parts to it. Actually, one is related to the segmentation. So what has really changed in the consumer segmentation in past and today is that it was probably a decade ago, it was okay to segment the consumers by category. It's no more segmentation which is valid anymore because the consumers are more segmented by the occasion than the category. So it is at some point, for example, if I were to take the example of food, so it was okay to, at one point, what I want to eat rather than today, which is how I want to eat it. So it is not about what I will consume, but how am I going to consume and at what occasion will I consume it. So that segmentation from that perspective has really evolved. The second very important thing that has also changed with the technology is the expectation on something which is called as hygiene. In any business, there would be for any product or any business, there would be hygiene factors, there are performance factors, and there are wow factors. I mean, for example, let's pick up a car, Nobody ever bought a car because it has a good ground clearance. But if it doesn't have a ground clearance, you will not buy it. So that's like hygiene, And performance is like mileage, You will never be satisfied as much as you may get. And then there are wow factors. So, for example, delivery. So people do not order food because it will get delivered. People order food because it has got taste, it has got quality, etc., etc. At one point, maybe 10 years ago, when we said 30 minutes or free, it was fantastic. People never expected that there would be no strings attached. But today, to deliver in 25 minutes, in 20 minutes, we have to use a lot of technology. So for example, one of the things that we use is shoulder surfing. Like, Ritesh mentioned that they, even when the customer hasn't paid, they still make the product. We start making the product when you have added the product to the cart. And if you are on the payment page on our make line, it also already starts reflecting that there are 10 customers who are ordering large pepperoni pizza and they are on the payment page. Now it's our risk whether to make it or not. And our data intelligence tells us at a 99% surety rate that go ahead and make the pizza. There is only 1% chance that you will throw it. And we do go ahead and make it. I mean, several cases like this, where the customer hasn't really even completed the order and there's a driver out of the door. So yeah, these are things that are really impacting the consumer behavior and segmentation overall. Yeah.
Very good, wonderful.
If I can add something
Sure.
on segmentation, because it's something that we really focus on at Careem. And the difference with the evolution of technology that we have seen is the fact that in the past, and not so long back, we were looking at previous behaviors of the user to segment them, looking at the last 1 week, the last 30 days. Today, the aim is to segment them based on what we are predicting them to do in the future. So obviously looking at their past behaviors and a lot of data on the past in order to be able to predict how this user will behave and then target them based on this prediction that we can make with fairly good accuracy, right? So it's moving from looking backwards only and segmenting how much is this user spending, how often, blah, 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 to how much is this user going to bring to my business in the future.
Wonderful. I'm guessing that you guys are going to need more data analysts in your organization. Very good. Actually, the next question is for Aurora. Now, Careem got a chance to work with both government side and the public sector side. So what kind of investment are we seeing in the digital ecosystem, both by the government and the private enterprises?
So on the private sector, I think the last couple of years have been very active in this region when we have seen funding in startups coming up from Saudi, from Kuwait, from the UAE. Even in the last couple of months, there are a few A rounds, B rounds, like what has happened with, I don't know, Baisat, Kitopi, what was this other, Sarwa also. Like from all different industries, we have seen investors coming up. And yeah, one of, or the biggest exit in the region, which has been Careem after the acquisition from Uber at a valuation of 3.1 billion.
So this was also the first and probably the only one unicorn so far, right, in the Middle East?
So there is a lot of private interest in the region to invest and to continue to seed and to fund these startups that are coming up in this region. Now, on the public side, we also see more involvement of the public sector in these investments. So from public firms that are investing into the government's thinking of how they can contribute to the development. One example from Careem would be Hala, or the joint venture that we had with the RTA, that basically made all their taxis that they have available in the streets also available in our platform. And this was something really unique, and it was through a tender. Many players from around the globe applied, and we finally got it in Careem. But this is something that shows the interest also from the public sector to invest and to collaborate with private companies to change the ecosystem.
Great, thank you for the answer, Aurora. Now the next question is for Mr. Shobhit. So I would like to know what are some growth hack strategies, if you can share with us, that work for Domino's and for your business.
Yeah, I think that I would pointed out two big things. One is the digital. We almost like now claim ourselves to be a digital company in the business of selling pizzas, rather than a pizza company also having digital, because actually out of the 80 plus countries that we operate in, probably more than half of it, more than half of the countries we are actually more than 60% on digital. So more than 60% of our business is online, not offline. So I think our consistent endeavor to promote digital and to keep lifting our game on the digital side of it is something which has really helped us. The second important point is the delivery, which is we always, across all markets that we operate, we always own the delivery experience. So from the time that you place the order through any channel that you do, but the pizza tracker, that your pizza is now in the make line, it has come out of the make line, it is now packed, it is now delivered, and this is the guy who's picking it up. So the ownership of the complete delivery experience is always done by us. We never hand over our product to a third party to go and deliver. We always ensure that it is across all markets, as standard, across 80 countries. Our product.
I've noticed many similarity in many food delivery companies. So the last delivery is fundamental for the customer experience, right?
You're right, but then at the same time, if you look at the market in UAE, most of the brands have actually thought that delivering through a third party is much probably cheaper, and therefore they have gone ahead and kind of outsourced the delivery experience. But from our side, it is absolute fundamental that we will never allow our food to be touched by anybody else except for ourselves. So that is another very big thing, and then we keep lifting our game on the delivery and on the digital. So these are really fundamental to our business. The third D that I talk about, and we keep saying the 3 Ds, the third D that we talk about is the data. So the data now, which is now merged more so with the digital, is really helpful, because as much as you keep using the data on the offline side of the business, it is great to do, but it is not real time. But when you start to use the data on the digital side of it, you can be very, very real time. Like the point that I was making about shoulder surfing, pizza tracker. These are all real time, and what really helps us is the amount of infrastructure, as Sridhar was rightly pointing out, that in this part of the world, the infrastructure really helps you to be able to, consistently take the packets, deliver the packets, So that is the 3 Ds, which is like really important for us. Apart from that, and what sits on top of all this is obviously, communication. In this part of the world, it is more complicated than any other, simply because we have got 150 different nationalities, and how do you find one common thread that binds all of them together? That's critical. Apart from that, the people. So in our case, and we are absolutely the leaders as much as our research tells us, close to around 15% of all the people that works in the store, including the drivers, gets promoted every single year in our case, so which is fantastic, and nobody else has come any near to that. So these are like really fundamental to our business, and that's yeah.
Very good, thank you. That's a great answer. Now one more question for Aurora, but Sridhar and Shobhit, feel free to add something if you have something to add. So I want to ask, what are some of the effective strategies to boost user engagement?
Okay, so I think this is similar to what we were discussing right now about growth hacks to grow the business as well, because retention is a big piece. And I would like to share a couple of examples. One is more like product related, the other one would be more communication related. So I'll start with the communication related one, and it's very close to the question I was asking before about how to target users and how to communicate with users that have recently joined your network. So what we did at Careem that really worked very well was to split those users between the ones that had been active in our platform for a longer term and those ones who had been only active for the first 30 days. Now that period, from your sign up until your first 30 days, we call it the honeymoon period. And now in that honeymoon period, what we do with users, instead of just throwing promotions at them, we try to educate them. We try to make sure that they understand how to use the app, the different services that are there, and try to make them reach milestones that ensure that they will stay retained. As an example, one would be add your credit card, because we have noticed that users that have their credit card in the platform have a very high retention when compared to those who doesn't. Or these kind of things. Or have you seen our packages option? Or have you seen that we have a loyalty program? So this kind of engagement through different channels to make sure that they have an onboarding experience has proved to be very good to increase the retention for this cohort of new users. Now, the other example that I wanted to share, and it's more around the engagement for the existing users, is around having a product that would make sure that we can capture more share of wallet for those users. Now, we were thinking about how to increase our retention at Careem, like to the next level by 20 percentage points, and what do we need to do to reach 100% retention, no churn at all. And then we came up with the idea, also looking at the industry, to have a subscription model, or what we call at Careem packages, which means basically that you purchase in advance a certain number of rides or of kilometers, and then you keep using them. Now, that initially was a source for us to improve our retention, because we assume that, okay, if you pay for a 30-day package, you're probably going to stay there. Then if we switch on an auto-renewal, you will continue to be there. But what we realized after launching this product is that it actually did wonders in increasing the number of trips per user that we call. So it's not only that the users stay in the platform, they are actually taking many more trips. So we came from an average on a monthly basis for a set of users of like 3.5 to 12. So something that we were playing on for retention, it actually helped us to capture more share of wallet, especially in an industry like ours, where you can basically, there's no switching cost. You can have Uber, you can have Careem, you can have any other application in your phone. In the morning you check which one has the lowest ETA or which one you have a promotion, and then you select that one, right? So we wanted to make sure that we captured that, and we did that through this product, and this has shown very good performance. And then there's tons of things you can do on top of that. Like, for example, in Saudi, we realized that there's a huge in-month seasonality. So whenever users have their, we call it like the pay week seasonality, 27th, they get their salaries, they start taking rides. Now, we have a problem because also some captains, so the drivers that we have in the platform, then stop driving and then they become users. So then we have an imbalance of supply and demand, but that is actually also for us the right time to market such products when you have like the availability of funds in your account to make sure that we lock those users over there. So these are strategies that have worked.
Very good. Thank you so much for the very extensive answer. Now, a question for Shobhit, but again, feel free for the other panelists to answer, is if you have managed to transform loyal users into influencers and how? Because we all heard about influencer marketing. This is the buzzword for the last 5 years at least. Now, many of them are fake, so that's why I'm going to ask them if you managed to transform their existing customer into influencers, and how was the experience?
Yeah, so I think we do a lot of such initiatives. For example, very recently in Saudi, we did an initiative wherein we asked our consumers to make the next pizza box. So to design the next pizza box, and over a period of 1 month, we had several new designs, and eventually the one that we selected was the pizza design, which was not just launched in Saudi, but it was launched across GCC.
Oh, so you really selected the design that came from one of your loyal customers.
Absolutely.
That's impressive.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously only the loyal customers and the ones who were really creative were the ones who are really participating in it, but then the whole idea of they designing the Domino's pizza box that will be used across the GCC was outstanding, and there was a huge engagement, and of course, you know, the kind of engagement and loyalty that we built with those people is immense. Not just that we use the one which was finally selected, but even the others were consistently engaged with us, and therefore we have built a long-term relationship with those customers. Again, we are now also the partner with Expo 2020 as the official pizza provider, and we are going to launch very soon another site, microsite, which is called as Let's Talk, and that site actually will invite the people from around the globe for new products, for packaging, for design, so many different things which are going to be incorporated in our store, not just the menu but also the design in the stores that we are going to actually operate in Expo. So this is two. And the third, very important, I think that I must place it right on top, is the revert on the consumer feedback. I think that we have been able to convert not just the loyals but even the distractors into our influencers by being able to revert back to them in time, and being able to, you know, convince them about their experiences with Domino's. I think that the feedback system is many companies, you know, take it as a one-way street as to, okay, I'm getting a lot of feedback, but then to revert back to it and to make that conversion is really critical. I can give one example. You know, we tried to be Toyota at one time. So there was one of our best-selling product, and we had done a lot of consumer research, and we made it a notch better. The notch better was as per all the research that we had done, because this was our best seller. So obviously we didn't want to take any chances. So after all the research, we realized that this is better than the best, and therefore we can replace the better than the best and go back to and launch the product. As soon as we launched it, the loyal customers of that product had really, got back to us on social media. But what we did is that we tagged all of them. Within 3 days, we got all of our supplies back, and we converted it back and posted it back on social media saying that, you know what, we listened to you, we came back, and we have relaunched the product that it originally was. That created so much of love for the brand that that can be won by just marketing spends, you know. So these are like really important ones for every marketer.
Oh, that's impressive. I can see that this definitely create a big jump in your advocacy from your existing clients.
Absolutely. Just one quick point.
Sure.
Yeah, this goes back to Aurora's engagement. I think as digital professionals, it's important for us also to know how to measure engagement, both in terms of the impact that it has had and the cost of engagement. The cost of acquisition is sort of well understood. People understand that the cost of acquisition is spread over the life cycle of a customer, etc., etc. But the cost of engagement is little less understood even at very senior levels. Right? People often think, oh, you spend 100,000 dirhams, where is the money next month? Right? It doesn't come that way. It doesn't come that way. It takes a while for that engagement to happen. Retention, branding, customer advocacy, a variety of parameters are used to measure engagement. And therefore, this maturity and patience to understand what engagement is all about, how to measure it, and how to quantify it is extremely important for us as digital professionals.
Thank you. Great. Now, how we're going with time? Do we have time for maybe one or two questions from the public?
Yes.
Perfect, that's it. So feel free to ask whatever you like to any one of them or the three of them.
My question is to Shobhit. Quite interesting piece, I love it. There's a trend that is happening, or rather going on the past few months. I'm noticing in the market that a lot of the QSR as well as fine dinings are logging out of the OTT platforms.
Which platforms?
OTT platforms, or like say Zomato's or you name it. You know. Because maybe the commission is quite high, they have a very high delivery charges. What's your opinion or take on this gamut?
Yeah, it's very interesting, and it's a pretty tricky question. So aggregator is a very love-hate relationship. I think I think that it has done wonders for the restaurants overall in the past few years, because they have really helped the proliferation of F&B overall for them to able to reach out to the customers. Though it also had an adverse impact on the brand loyalty from the customer's perspective. Now, what is also happening in Middle East is the monopolization of this aggregator business, because eventually Delivery Hero today in UAE, in Qatar, in Bahrain controls almost 90% plus of the market. So there is a lot of monopolistic approach as well. Now, some restaurants running out of business. It is not only because of them, so we should not completely also blame them for it. Yes, the commissions are high, but they had to be high at some point, because they are bleeding money forever. So there is no way in that business to be on marketplace to be able to make money, and that is the reason that we understand that, and that is why globally we had taken a call that we will never ever put our business in their hands. So we are on marketplace all right, but we never ever allow any of the aggregators around the world to deliver. So that is not the only reason. That is definitely a big reason, because of the commissions going really high. But overall in the economy, some people had put their complete bet on them. They had kind of outsourced their sale to them, and that is why they are struggling pretty badly. So economy is one thing, aggregators is another thing. They have done a lot of good, but at the same time, it's also a concern if you have kind of completely outsourced your business to them. Does that answer your question?
Perfect, thank you.
Yes, we have one more question.
This is for you, Aurora. So I'm a frequent Careem user, but now each time I see, I compare. So there's the Hala option and there's the Careem economy option. And when you, even after applying promo codes, you realize that you're still more expensive than the Hala option. Or as ordering a regular, RTA cab becomes easier, and it's still cheaper than all promotions in Careem. Are you guys also seeing some level of downtrade, or how are you still maintaining the premiumness and then trying to keep a higher value customer there rather than let them downtrade to an economy or to Hala?
Okay, so, well, first of all, the UAE is a market that's heavily regulated. So by regulation from the RTA, no ride-hailing service can be less than 30% more expensive than an RTA normal taxi. So that is the way from the regulator to protect their business. Fair enough, okay, this is the rules of the game. So when we decided to tender for that joint venture with RTA, we saw that as also a game for acquiring new users. And if we're able to differentiate both services that we're offering, one is the regular taxi that now you can book through an app with all the benefits of that, like the tracking, payment, etc., etc. But now we need to make sure that we can also differentiate your economy or business right into something more premium by offering other perks, like you would have water in the car, Wi-Fi in the car, etc., etc. Now it is true that what we have seen is that some of the users that before were using our go-kart type, which was a pilot that was a bit cheaper, economy or business, have now moved to Hala. But we have also seen a huge number of new users coming in that are actually also, we are actually also able to upsell into the economy and business card type. And since the vision for Careem is not only to stay in the ride-hailing business, but it's to become the super app of the region, the more of these services that we have and the more we can cater to a broader audience, the more we can power our vision to become the everyday super app. So for us, it's not only about ride-hailing, it's about ride-hailing, but then we have payment systems, we have food delivery with Careem Now, so no Zomato, Careem Now. And a lot of other services that we are aiming to offer in the future as we also onboard external providers into the Careem Super App. So yeah, downside on the UAE usual ride-hailing business, but overall it has played a very beneficial role for Careem.
And I can guess that you're getting a crazy amount of valuable data out of it, out of the typical regular customers that they take the normal taxi.
Although there are some regulations also on sharing data, but we've reached an agreement and now we're able to cross-sell as well, yeah.
Very good, very good. Any more questions? Ladies and gentlemen, this is your last chance to pick their brain. Okay, I think that's we're okay for today. So it's been a pleasure for me to panel Mr. Shobhit, Mr. Sridhar, and Mrs. Aurora. So was it a good, valuable idea you got out of it? I'm sure. So give them a round of applause. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Christian. I'd like you all to stay here, please, and I would like to call upon Biswajit now to please hand over a token of appreciation to all of them. Thank you, everyone. I'm sure this was a great session. Thanks, Christian. Thanks to all the other panelists as well.